Bob, thank you so much for joining us at the 2025 Bentonville Film Festival. We're so happy to have you here with us and get a moment of your time today. We're going to be talking about the piece Suburban Fury. For the viewer at home, would you please like to tell them a little bit about the piece?
Sure. Suburban Fury is a feature-length documentary that focuses on Sara Jane Moore, who in 1975 tried to assassinate Gerald Ford in San Francisco. What makes it interesting about her is that she was a pretty unusual would-be assassin at the time. She was 45 years old. She was a recently divorced suburban housewife, had been married to a physician and had a 9-year-old son. Had never been arrested for anything in her life, including jaywalking. So she wasn't a career criminal. She wasn't politically active. She had come from a relatively well-to-do family and was a somewhat conservative person. So this was totally against character for someone like her. And the other thing that makes the film really interesting is we set it against the climate, the socio-political climate of the late 60s and to the mid-70s. And that's a very interesting time, especially in the Bay Area, but all around the world. And it has some relationship to what's happening today.
Thank you. And of course, with this film, I do believe she had a request about who all could be spoken to in the making of the film?
Yes. In agreeing to make the film, we agreed to only interview her. So unlike other documentaries, we don't have a bunch of talking head experts contradicting her, or we don't have psychiatrists for the most part saying what's wrong with her, or what's right with her, anything like that. She wanted to tell her own story. The press that had come out about her after the assassination attempt had been very critical and negative, and sort of personally. I mean, they called her frumpy, they thought she was sort of a joke, and she was hurt by it, and she wanted to be able to tell her story in her way and get, quote, the truth out there. But that's a whole interesting thing about documentaries, that people think, oh, documentaries are true. Now we know what really happened. But there is no truth. The truth is fluid.
And do you think with the time period that was at, and the press coverage and the personally attacking her, do you think some of that had to do with how women were viewed at the time?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, it would be like women were secretaries, women were lower on the totem pole.
Nurses, teachers.
Right, but compared to men to begin with, and she was surrounded by men. I mean, there aren't virtually, she's the only woman who's ever taken a shot at a president. She's really the only woman would-be assassin. And it's like, you know, women aren't even capable of being assassins. So yeah, absolutely. So.
And then with this, of course, being a documentary, but you have co-writer credit. For those who don't necessarily know, how do you end up with, because, you know, most people think a writer is a script. How do you get a writer on a documentary?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked, actually. No one's asked that question before. You know, the way we started was Rob DeVore, our director, had filmed Sara Jane Moore over the course of about 10 days in San Francisco, and he also interviewed her in New York in 2010. So we had her. We had her interviews, we had her audio and video tapes. So you have that, but we had hundreds of hours of video, and you've got to figure out what story do you want to tell. Plus, you got to figure out how do you want to tell this story. We're not just sticking her in front of the camera and letting it go, so we have to place her somewhere. So in writing a documentary, you have to sort out the story you want to tell from all of the possible stories you have available to you, and you have to put it in some context and figure out how you want to surround, in this case, Sara Jane's interviews, with other pieces of information.
And then you're also the head archivist.
Correct.
Which means you're a fact checker as well. Was there anything surprising that you found in doing your archival work?
Right. Not only did I check facts, which is important, I had to find all of the archival footage that goes along with it. And more than half of our film is archival, which I'll talk about a little later because it's something that is important to me and something I learned a great deal about on this film. But in checking facts, the thing I found was when I first went through all of the footage that we had of her, and I should say that I came on board this project quite a long time ago, but not at the beginning. I was part of it maybe 10 years ago or so when we were rewriting it for some other purposes, like to do a fictionalized version for a big motion picture company, or a streaming network wanted to do a mini-series, so we rewrote it 32 times. And then that didn't happen. But in the last 4.5 years, I've been full-time on this and working on it. And when I first watched and listened to Sara Jane's interviews, I didn't believe a word she said. I thought she was a name-dropping jerk, basically. I thought she was lying, self-promoting, narcissistic. I hated her. And I just didn't believe it. You know, oh yes, I talked to Randy Hurst. It's like, what are you talking about? And she has stories about meeting Burt Lancaster and all sorts of other people. And as I did my research, I could not catch her in a single lie. That's what really surprised me, that what she says happened. I mean, she is not lying. She doesn't always answer every question. She's good at avoiding, but she didn't lie in the film. So I found that fascinating. I also found it fascinating, sort of giving away part of the film, but part of the film involves the Patty Hearst kidnapping, which happened at that time and got her involved with the FBI, as it turns out. And I found it interesting that on sentencing and at trial, Sara Jane also didn't lie. You know, she took credit for what she did. She took responsibility and went to prison when she had a way out. Whereas Patty Hearst, who presumably became involved with the SLA who had kidnapped her, renounced all that and took a defense of the Stockholm Syndrome and tried to get out of it, and ultimately did and was pardoned and went back home to her nice life. But Sara Jane spent 32 years in prison, so I sort of admired her willingness to at least stand up and take responsibility for her actions.
She stayed true to her reality.
Correct.
With that, you mentioned she was working with the FBI, and I know I don't want to give too much on the film away, but it talks about some of the training she was given in being able to complete reports. Do you think any of that helped keep the facts in her head better?
Absolutely. I think that, as she says in the film, one of the things she had to do for the FBI is every day she had to write a report of what she did that day. That was very detail-oriented and complete. And at first, she wasn't detail-oriented enough, and they criticized her for that. And even after she went to prison, this is a really amazing thing. After she went to prison, she still wrote reports and sent them to her FBI control agent about what she did every day in prison. She got so indoctrinated into writing these reports. And I do think that that kept her facts and her story very straight. And she kept a book of those things that you do see in the film, so that she can go back and look at them. And I think that's helpful. I think that, you know, she's not just remembering from now, 30, 40, 50 years later. She's looking at what she wrote at the time as well.
And with the footage of the interviews of her that had been obtained, of course, it's different locations in San Francisco, some in New York, but she's usually inside of a station wagon.
She's often inside a station wagon. And when Rob started doing the film, he wasn't sure exactly where he wanted to interview her, and they looked at some hotel rooms and traditional interview spaces, and he hated them. It just wasn't the film he wanted to make. And then it dawned on him that he should interview her in the back of a car, because she spent a lot of time in a car. The FBI picked her up in cars, and they drove around, and they met in cars. And that's what the car is supposed to represent. That's not her car. That'd be the FBI's car, and she's always in the back seat. And she's interviewed in other places. Her New York interviews, by the way, are all audio. All the video, all the footage you see in the film of her is from the Bay Area, San Francisco.
And there's scenes with the gorgeous red Golden Gate Bridge in the background, and you can see the bay, and you're hearing her tell this story of what she experienced, and it kind of creates a neat juxtaposition with this calm and serene and something we all know and see, and we're seeing inside how this person thinks, which isn't what would be considered traditional.
Right. And yet, it's interesting. I also thought when I first saw her on video, that she seemed pretty traditional to me. You know, she could be your next door neighbor, she could be your grandmother or your mother, and you would never think twice about her or think that she's going to be someone who's going to commit some heinous crime. So she's an interesting person, and early in the film she talks about being three people at that time, and she talks about everybody is at least two people, because you are who you are at home, you have that persona, and then you're another person at work, you have a persona at work. We all act somewhat differently at work. And she said, and you can create a third. I mean, so you have a third job, basically, was what she was saying. And I bought into that. It was interesting when when Rob and I first were looking at that and trying to sort through how to position her in a film. Rob was saying, does she have multiple personality? Is she three people? Which she wasn't. But it was interesting to think about that, because at one point we thought about having her surrounded by men and having her doing the film basically as a psychiatric interview, putting the audience in a position of one of the interviewers to determine, was she crazy, or what do you think about this person? But we decided against it in the end. It just didn't work as well as really putting her in the time frame that this happened, because it's such an amazing period of time in U.S. history, and it does relate to today. So we thought we wanted to do that.
Well, they say history repeats itself.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I've spent time living in other countries, and I think that history repeats itself in all colonized countries. I mean, it's sort of the same story as hers. The motivations that she notes are sort of the same as indigenous people would have in other countries. You know, it's like they never can seemingly get ahead. It's the people who, the colonizers, hundreds of years later, continue to cause repression repress the indigenous people, and it makes it difficult for them to succeed. And Sara Jane became aware of that at this time. She had grown up in a pretty well-to-do family in the South. She thought that everyone had equal opportunity, and she thought that she didn't really realize her own prejudices even at that time we made the film, or the time that the film was about. And she became more aware as she got involved with some of these groups in the Bay Area through her involvement in the FBI.
And how did you get into archival work? I mean...
Well, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And when we got this film back, we had been offered a whole lot of money for this film by the networks and stuff like that. If there's all these ifs, you know, they didn't give us the money. It was like, if this happens, we want to make this, and then you get this money. Well, that never happened. They didn't get an A-list star. They didn't do this and that. So the film came back to us, and we had no money. So it was Rob and I working on a shoestring budget, the two of us, and trying to figure out what to do with this film, and how are we going to make it into a real documentary, not a TV movie that was based on a true story. And I had no choice. And once we decided that we wanted to put it in the time frame of the 60s and 70s, I was the archivist, he was the editor, he was the director, but we sat side by side every day, virtually every single day, for about 4 years going through this, and we'd have ideas. I was in the Bay Area at the time that she took the shot, so I had some good idea of what was going on then. But I had to just go find it. I had to go find archival footage. I had to research things, and it's interesting. You go down very deep rabbit holes with this stuff, because I didn't know a lot of what this was about, so you start researching and looking it up, and then you go from one thing to another and deeper, and there's just so much stuff. It's so layered. So yeah, it was just by chance. I am well educated. I have multiple degrees, so I've spent a lot of time in school, so research is not strange to me. So.
And what is a tip or a piece of advice you would share to someone that wants to begin doing research, wants to get into documentaries? What is something you think that, this is something to make sure is on your radar?
Well, most archivists in films are looking for archival footage. And so you have to know what you're looking for to begin with. So, I mean, you study the subject that the film is about, and, read as much as you can about the times, and look at as much video as you can, and look at other films about that time, and just try to get a sense of it, and then start digging deep. And it's interesting in looking for, and this is one of the things I really learned on this film, I wish I would have learned it a little sooner, is that there's a lot of footage online. I mean, YouTube and innumerable archives that you can get at online that have video. And you can just rip those videos off the internet. And that's what I did. I mean, that's how I got it. I mean, we have an amazing array of archival footage that people haven't seen, from home movies to news broadcasts to just amazing stuff, just because I kept looking and looking and looking and found this stuff. That's not the way most films are made. Most films hire archival producers who do this for a living, have done this forever, have great connections to studios, and they want some archival footage. They will go to one of these major studios, Getty, ABC, CBS, NBC, and work with someone there to get pieces of film to look at. That's how they find it. They don't do what I did. They don't spend, years searching the internet for this stuff. They have someone else working with them, sort of a librarian of sorts. And they're limited in what they can find, because they're limited to what that archive has. Now, there are lots of archives, and you can get a lot of different things. But the other thing about it is, when you do that, you're limited in how much you have to pay for it. So in making this film, to begin with, our budget was nothing. I mean, it was, like $50,000 budget for a feature-length film was nothing. But once we had all this great archival material, and we wanted, and then we were invited to screen the film in New York, so it was actually not going to just be seen by us on our monitors, but it was going to be seen by an audience, shown on a big screen, and it was going to get reviewed. We could not use the quality of footage that I ripped from the internet. So then you've got to go back. We had to go back, and we hired 2 archival producers who were great, who had relationships with all these archival houses and studios, and we had to get as close to or matching footage as I had found. But in doing that, the cost of doing that, just of licensing and purchasing this footage for use in the film and getting high resolution archival, because what you get from online is very low resolution, something you look at on your phone or on your TV monitor, and it looks fine there, but once you blow it up to 100 times that, it looks like crap. So you have to get very high resolution, so you're getting the highest resolution you get. I don't know if I want to say how much we ended up spending on
It had some zeros
archival.
behind it.
It had 6 zeros, and it wasn't in one of the low 1, 2, 3 numbers up front. So, you know, if you're looking at a $50,000 budget and suddenly you have hundreds of thousands of dollars that you have to spend to license and obtain this footage, it's a trick. And we were very, very fortunate to get investors, specifically one great investor, our chief executive producer, Dee Dee Wigley, who helped us be able to do this because she felt so strongly about the film. So it was great, and we're very happy that that happened. But man, it's hard to make a film now. If you're just somebody, because you asked, so what if you're a young archivist who want to get involved? What do you do? I don't know. I mean, if I would have known then what I know now, I don't know what I would have done, because we didn't have the money, and I don't know how we would have even imagined getting the money. So how can you make a film, you know, a historical documentary film, if you want to use archival footage, and you have to spend a fortune for it? I mean, we're spending $10,000, $20,000 for 10 or 15 seconds of footage. I mean, it's nuts. That was like, you know, a third of our budget.
Oh, yeah, and then
for
some.
15 seconds, yeah.
And from the viewer side, seeing some of that footage, that was kind of powerful. I mean, like I said, I was barely alive when all of this happened, but I do remember the 70s. I remember the cars. I remember the clothing, because those things would still be worn as I was a toddler and growing. And it had an impact in seeing this. Like, wait, I remember seeing those cars on the street, or I remember so-and-so had a car like that. And it helps relate to this being part of my life's history.
Yeah, I mean, film is a visual medium, and we're telling a visual story, and you need that. And it does evoke the time period, and it brings back memories. Even if you weren't there, you may have watched things about it, or family members have talked about it, and it creates a picture in your mind, and it really fleshes out the rest of, in this case, Sara Jane's story and the story of the socio-political atmosphere of the time. And it's essential. I mean, it's great. And I was really heartened that I've been called out quite a bit about the archival, that people love it. You know, the reviewers have loved the archival, and it's a major part of the film. So I was very lucky to get to do it, and I'm happy that it worked out.
And we want
So now someone could call me and ask me to work on their next film doing their archival. I would love to do it again. I enjoy doing it. I like those deep dives and all that. I just have to really like the subject.
And they would get a quality product if they brought you on board.
Thank you.
Let's get to know you a little bit. What, for personal, for fun, for getting away from the Sara Jane of it all, what are you reading these days?
You know, I'm not reading anything. I'm not a great reader. I had sort of dyslexia as a kid, and reading was not big. So I became very visually oriented, and hence the movies. I had an uncle who worked in the film industry. He was the head of distribution for, at one time, Columbia and TriStar and another major film company, and he was in Beverly Hills, and he was my favorite uncle. My other uncles are dead, so I can say that. He's dead too, so nobody cares. In any case, So he was influential, but I watched movies. I remember for even birthday parties I had when I was a kid, my uncle would get us screenings of movies that hadn't come out yet, and he'd get us these little screening rooms, and I could have my friends come to these screening rooms. I remember watching, it was like an Elvis movie, like Jailhouse Rock. I think we ended up screening for one of my birthday parties at a little private screening room, and it hadn't come out, and it was really cool. But yeah, I tend to watch movies and television. I'm not a big reader. It's just
Then what's your guilty pleasure movie or TV?
my wife would say that my go-to for not thinking is Shark Tank. But I like British crime things and mysteries. I love Slow Horses, and what else have we seen? I mean, those kinds of things. I just get really involved. Plus, I like Succession, and I like White Lotus. Those kinds of things people like, but they're well done. They're amazing. I mean, TV is amazing these days.
And now we're going to circle back to the Bentonville Film Festival.
Okay.
When you all found out you'd gotten accepted, what did that mean to all of you? We're working with a company who to get us into different film festivals. That's what they do. Obviously, Bentonville is not Cannes, and it's not Sundance, and it's not the New York Film Festival. So for me, the first thing is, I have never even heard of Bentonville. But then I talked to people and they say, no, Bentonville's cool. It's like Walmart thing. But the people from the company who are determining and finding what film festivals we go to were really positive about it. And they said it's a great festival. It's a really nice city. And you'll love it. So, you know, one of the things about going to the different film festivals, and we've been in a lot of festivals, is getting to go to different cities, meet different people, learn about parts of the country I've never been to. In fact, I've been to all 50 states now because this is my 50th state. I'd never been to Arkansas. So here I am, you know, I'm 77 years old or something like that, and I'm visiting my final of the 50th states, so I get to have visited them all. So yeah, I didn't know anything about the festival, but we're always happy that people want to see our film and they enjoy it. I mean, it's another thing about making a film is when we're sitting there making it, we don't really have any idea what people are going to think of it. And we're making it because we want people to like it. So obviously, when people choose it to be a part of their festival and they have a lot of choices and they pick ours, it's very nice, and we're very appreciative. Well, I thank you so much for your time today, and I wish much success for Suburban Fury.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Jenn.